Welcome. Today's lesson is on sequences and a recursive formula or recursive formulas, which you've had last year, so this should kind of be a review. The first thing I want to emphasize is the way that recursive formulas can be expressed. Last year I taught a lot of the f of 1 giving a value like 4. So in a recursive formula, you'll always have to have some type of a reference point, usually the starting value, the first value being 4. And then they tell you how to get to some random term n, so the nth term, by doing something usually to the previous term, which is this f of n minus 1. And I want you to realize that this symbol here means the previous term, right? It's not f times n minus 1. And then we do something to that term, like maybe add 4. So then if you wanted to find f of 2, to find f of 2, 2 minus 1 is 1. You'd take f of 1, and f of 1 is 4, and you'd add 4 to it, which would be 8. To find f of 3, put a 3 here. To find f of 3, well, what's 3 minus 1? 3 minus 1 is 2, so I'm going to take f of 2, the second term, which f of 2 is 8, and I'm going to add 4 to it, which is 12, and so forth. And then it's easy to follow that because you're just adding 4 to the previous term, so then you get 16, f of 5 is 20, and so forth. Now, this is in function notation. Another way to represent recursive formulas is they do the a like we did last time with our explicit formulas. So what they'll do is they'll say, all right, let's let the first term, so they'll use a to represent a term with a subscript of 1 to represent the first term. So let's let a1 be 7, and then we say a nth term, or the nth a term, is going to be found by taking the previous term, so this little subscript of n minus 1, so like if you put a 2 here, 2 minus 1, that would be 1, you take the first term, and then whatever operation's happening to it. Let's say we're minusing 5 this time. So then we could find a second term by taking 2 minus 1 is the first term, which this is the first term, and we're going to minus 5 from 7 and get 2. Ace of 3 would be taking 3 minus 2 is, or sorry, 3 minus 1 is 2, so it would be taking the second term and minusing 5 from it. So 2 minus 5 is negative 3. And then it's easy to move on from there because then you just, again, take the previous term and you minus 5 from it, negative 8. Ace of 5 would be negative 13 because we're minusing 3 from the previous term. Now, it doesn't have to be a subtraction operation. We could be doing multiplication. So let's do another one. Let's say that the first term is 2, and to get to the next term, or to a term, we take the previous term, that's this n minus 1, and now let's multiply by 3. So usually they put that in front, 3 times the previous term. So a term is equal to 3 times the previous term. So now we can find the second term by taking the previous term, which is the first term, which is 2, and multiplying by 3. That gives us 6. To find the third term, we take the previous term, which is 6, and multiply by 3, which is 18. To find the next term, we take the previous term, which is 18, and we multiply by 3, which is going to be 48. Nope, it's not going to be 48. That's 30 and 24. That's going to be 54. I can do my multiplication. It might be handy to have a calculator with you or next to you while you do these. Also, recursive formulas could use actually 2 previous terms. What I mean by 2 previous terms is they'll give you not only the first term, let's say being 1, and the second term, let's say being also 1. So they'll give you 2 terms, and then the formula to find a random term n is going to use not only the previous term, but maybe you're going to add that to the term that came 2 before it. So now be careful here. This is n minus 2. Now let me explain what that means. If I wanted to find the third term, what's 3 minus 1? I'm going to take the second term, and I'm going to add that to what's 3 minus 2. 3 minus 2 is the first term. Well, do I know the second term? I do. It's 1. Do I know the first term? I do. It's 1. And what's 1 plus 1? 2. So that means the third term is going to be 2. Now, let's say I wanted to find the fourth term. Well, the fourth term, again, using this formula, 4 minus 1, I'm going to take the third term, and I'm going to add it to what's 4 minus 2. I'm going to add that to the second term. So do I know the third term? I do. The third term is 2. The second term, it's back up here, is 1, and 2 plus 1 is 3. So now I can find I know the fourth term is 3. And now to find the fifth term, and again, you'll see this pattern. I'm just going to add these two together. That's what the formula tells you to do. It's add the two previous terms. So that's going to be 5. The sixth term would be these two terms added together, or 8. The seventh term would be these two terms added together, or 13. That's all you really should need to know in order to do this lesson, but I'm going to do one more to make sure that you realize that we can be doing things to both of those previous terms. So let's do a completely different recursive formula. Again, with recursive, you have to have a starting or a reference value. So let's say the first value is 0 this time. Let's say the second value, because I'm going to do one that uses two previous terms. Let's say the second value is 2. And now let's say that the next value is going to be taking 2 times the previous value and adding it to well, let's just say the term, 2 terms in front. So this is the previous term. This is 2 terms in front of the nth term. So now if I wanted to find the third term, I'm going to do 2 times the second term plus the first term. Well, what's 2 times the second term? It's 4, plus what's the first term? 0. So the third term is going to be 4. Now if I wanted to find the fourth term, again, I'm going to do 2 times the third term. I didn't really need the parentheses. I just kind of got in the habit of doing that, or I do that on occasion. And then again, the n minus 2, and remember what's n? 4 now. We're looking at n minus 4, so it's a2. That's 2, or a2. So that's going to be 2 times 4 is 8, plus a2 is 2. That's going to be 10. Now if I wanted to find the next term, I'm going to double this, 2 times the previous term. That's what it says. 2 times 10 is 20, added to this term, so it's going to be 24. The sixth term, well, I'm going to double this, 2 times the previous term, which is 48, added to the term that was before that. 48 plus 10 is 58, and so forth and so forth. If you have any questions, please bring them to class.